We're going to start a league. We're going to do Black Hollywood. We're going to do a lot of stuff I don't see being done. We're going to do Black Hollywood. What else we was going to do? Oh, I know what else we was going to do. We was going to do, I was one of these kids. We was going to Cosby our way out. We was going to go to a HBCU, a good school, and the education was going to plug in. It ain't work. And nothing worked. But instead of realizing, you know what, this must be a trick because nothing is working. There must be a trick bag in here somewhere because nothing is working. We just keep coming back for more. We just keep believing. Then we said, well, we the culture. We the culture. We gonna do the culture. We the culture. And we run the culture. I'm so sick of Negroes talking about do it for the culture. Shut up. But then we have this whole situation with now Puffy's been talking real good. I remember we were talking about the Comcast and Byron Allen. He was talking real good. I remember that. And then he came and he talked real good about the Grammys. Talked real good, and that was some good stuff. Started telling the truth about stuff. Then it turns out, maybe if we believe Mace, that you've been doing one thing when you deal with black artists and talking about how we gotta support black people. You've been doing a whole nother thing behind the scenes now. Could it be that the only person who really got paid at Bad Boy was you? There was a great Andre Harrell quote from a long time ago which says there was a whole pie in terms of these black record labels and they only got the crumbs on the edges. Nobody likes to bring that quote up no more. So the question I have, family, is how long are we gonna run? Are we gonna really fall for the okie doke? We've been falling for the okie doke. They play into our desire to be self-sufficient and all this stuff. And then the next thing you know, you back to square one like these people. Let me just put this quote up here. This is back to the LA cannabis and what they're going through. You jump through all of these hoops and it's taken away from you, she said, adding that it would be hard for would-be entrepreneurs to trust the city as the industry continued to leave people behind. How the hell is the face of cannabis white now? How could that even be possible when you see who did all the jail time? How could LA get this wrong? Maybe LA didn't get it wrong. Maybe they got it right for what they wanted to do. Have we ever thought about that? Evelyn and Brandon Brinson, both 33, downsized their home and sold a car to finance their planned marijuana business. Both 33. Come on, man. And Brandon, who was a barber, stopped paying rent for his space at the shop. Our whole life savings are in this project. On a recent afternoon, the couple showed The Guardian around the still vacant store they had rent to house their dispensary. They pointed to empty glass shelves and the display counters that would feature their products. They estimate that they have lost more than $200,000 on the endeavor. So something was supposed to be for black wealth and promoted as building black wealth has made us poorer. Right? Now, you all remember, I talk about Andrew Johnson a lot on this show. There was supposed to be land redistributed to ADOS. Instead, it went back to the Confederates because they needed us as a commodity to make cotton, not just for the South, but Great Britain, as in The Color of Money. For those of you who read the book, I'm going to get to the author of that book who says some interesting things a little bit later. They could have us, and we could have been owning our own farms and doing all of the things that they talk about. They stole that from us. You can't give that. Listen, even if LA did everything right, you can't give this back to me through opportunity. You give this back to me through reparations. Yes, we need opportunity. And yes, we need inclusion. We need economic inclusion. That's part of what Byron Allen's lawsuit was about. But what we're talking about here in terms of how you make us whole as a group, you don't do that outside of reparations. That's always been it. And let me just get to the quote at the top of this page. Why call it social equity and make people think that you're helping the black and brown? I hate why people keep saying black and brown. They just made us say it too. Black and brown communities, Evelyn said, it's stressful seeing everything that you've worked for in your entire life being placed in something that you thought was going to be an opportunity to help you, and it has literally hurt you. Absolutely. And that's not it. That's not all. You know what you can do, though? You can't get opportunity because you don't have the wealth to sit there. And they know you don't have the wealth to just sit there. A lot of people do, though. What you can do is be the face. Remember we were talking about they were her property and how diversity programs, like a lot of, you have women who the man is really running the company, but it's a diversity program, so she can get diversity set aside. Even though she's a white woman with a white husband or whatever, and he's really the company. You remember we talked about that? Well, you're seeing some of that in the cannabis industry as well. Now this Burners, whatever this little Burners little shop is, a little Burners weed shop, I think it's in San Francisco. Check this out. Burners on High is also supposed to be a social justice success story. The dispensary claims to be the first in San Francisco to be owned by a black man, a longtime city nonviolence advocate named Sean Richard, right? But hold on one second. And although both of Richard's ownership partners are white men, Burners is nonetheless the very first weed store to open for business under the city's equities program, one of a growing number of efforts across the country to try to make the legalized cannabis industry less white. The problem, always a problem, many critics say, is that equity programs suffer from the exact same failings as every other business effort in cannabis. In order to stand a chance of winning a permit, let alone founding a viable business, black and brown business people must still find well-capitalized partners. Got to find white people. Almost always this means finding white partners, rendering equity programs little more than a cynical example of tokenism at best. Tokenism at best. See, you fell for the banana in the tailpipe again. So I'm going to do this. You're not going to do it without white partners. And that means you're not free. Understand what we're talking about here is freedom. If you can't do it independently, that means you haven't been made whole. We haven't been made whole. If we can't do it by ourselves, with ourselves, as a group or individually, we haven't been made whole. We got to always, how are you free as a business person? You got to always go find white people. But that's a social equity program. No, you're just the face of something. That's all. And the minute they don't need you anymore, you're going to get tossed. You're going to get plucked, thrown in the trash can. Garbage. That's it. They needed you to be there for that. Well, let's finish reading about this little white-owned dispensary. In the case of Burners, not only was Richard compelled to partner with a kind of young, tech-savvy white man who already dominate the cannabis industry, he also partnered with white men who enjoy political connections and who figured out a way to master the application process in order to edge out other applicants. For the first weed store on this part of whatever street, including people of color who say this compromised the process. So you got with the white boys who had the social capital and they used you. They said we're gonna put a black face in the face of the face and we're gonna use you. And we already figured out We done figured out how to game the system, and you're part of how we gaming the system. You're not really important. You're part of how we're gaming the system for us. Right? And you couldn't have done it without us. That's not, I don't know. In the 2010 study from the Minority Business Development Agency found that white business owners started their businesses with an average of $106,702 in capital, compared to $35,205 for African American owned business. We must keep in mind the primary reason for business failure is low capitalization. This is from the report. This is a quote from the wealth report that I mentioned earlier. We must keep in mind that primary reason for business failure is capitalization, and blacks began the entrepreneurship game with low capital finance, reinforcing the theme that wealth begets wealth. Wealth begets wealth. You're not starting a cannabis business, sweetheart. You may find some white people who want to use you as the face of that business. Or you may get into the business and get everything stripped from you. And they're going to call that reparation and walk off. They keep doing stuff and calling the reparation and walking off. That's not even inclusion. Because you didn't even give like a business grant or a business loan. You made me eat all this failure. In terms of the timeline, I got to keep this storefront up. And then, there was another quote. Let me see if I can find this other quote. There was another woman. I'll just say it. There was another person in this series of quotes who was even worse. This black person who was getting into the weed business held on to a piece of property because there was one of the rules is that there has to be like no weed dispensaries nearby. Held on to it for like a year. They said, no, you can't do it because there's a weed dispensary near where you are. She said, no, it's not. It's no weed dispensary near where I am. They had kind of grandfathered in somebody who had a weed business from Oregon. So she lost all this money, like with her dispensary and everything. And because they had grandfathered somebody in whiteness, because they already had one in Oregon. So much BS. They're basically just extracting money from ADOS and calling it reparations. You think about that. You extract money and call it reparations. Ain't that something? You gonna take my money because I'm gonna have an investment here, and I'm gonna invest, and you're gonna set up something to where I can't really do anything with it, or the white boy gotta come and save me, whichever. And in which case, if you get in business with somebody and they have the capital, you're not in business. I hope I don't have to explain that to anybody. If you get in business with somebody and you don't have any capital, it's not a business. You're the face. If they have the overwhelming majority of the capital, you see what I just read. If they had a capital, and you're the face. They needed a black face. They needed a black face and a good black story, and that was you. That's it. That's all you are. You're a story in the face. So don't tell me that we don't need reparations. I don't know who you think you're talking to. Compromise the process. Let's go to now. The problem is that so far, the multi-billion-dollar cannabis industry is overwhelmingly white and male. In the 2016 report, Amanda Chicago Lewis, is that your name? Found that only 1% of dispensaries nationwide were owned by black people. A review the following year conducted by Marijuana Business Daily discovered 81% of the people who started cannabis firms were white. In Chicago, all 11 of the stores selling weed on January 1, the first day of legal sales in Illinois, were white owned, prompting black city aldermen to compare cannabis to sharecropping. And this is how the dude tried to make it like we're doing it different. Big businesses coming in trying to push us out. We're gonna really bring people. He was on the Breakfast Club talking about the culture. I'm so tired. Every time somebody talk about the culture, I'm whatever. That's a whole nother issue. We're doing it for the culture. See, what you have to understand is that this has always been done. That's what we have to understand. This idea that we're not going to give you reparations. What we're going to give you, we're going to give you black capitalism, right? Without capital. And that's going to be your reparations. I don't know, just got. And when you hear people say that today, what you have to, and I said this before on the show, but I want to drive it home. What you have to understand is that the people who are saying that today are parroting Nixon. Nixon was forced to leave the White House. That's who they're parroting. No, listen to this. Focusing on black capitalism allowed Nixon to neutralize black resistance while also undermining the demand for reparations and diminishing the social safety net. So he just talked. I mean, I don't have another way to say it. He just talked. Somebody, yep, gilding the ghetto. During the campaign, Nixon co-opted Black Power's rhetoric of economic self-determination to call for a segregated black economy. He used language of free market capitalism, a racially neutral and unpopular idea at the time, to embrace the idea of black enterprise. People in the ghetto, Nixon said, have to have more than an equal chance. They have to be given a dividend. Who does that sound like? Black business and black banking, the theory went, would be the key to black economic progress because they would allow black communities to use their own money to create a beneficial multiplier effect. This move allowed Nixon to neutralize black resistance, indeed to enlist the full-throated support of many activists, while also furthering his coalition's desire for a diminished social safety net. By discouraging welfare dependency in the name of black enterprise, he was able to undermine black demands for economic redress and reparations. People who own their homes, he reasoned, don't burn their neighborhoods. This same logic later justified his dismantling of Lyndon B. Johnson's war on poverty programs, as well as his neglect of other anti-poverty efforts, which were seen as costly and responsible for creating the dependency state. With a little federal aid, it placed the black problem, the problem of poverty, in the hands of black entrepreneurs. See, let me just say something. Understand that this is one of the telltale signs that you are being conned. If the person, whether it's a politician or a governor or a mayor, if that person is telling you that you are the solution to your own problem, you're being conned. America did this. America has to fix it. Now, I'm not saying that there can't be other programs like this, tax programs, that can be an addendum, an addition to what is being done. It can absolutely be an addition to what you're doing, but it cannot be a replacement for it. And you little Negro, me little Negro, we cannot fix this. We are not Superman. I know some of us think that, and I hear Superman, Superwoman, whatever you want to call yourself. You are not that. I hate to be a bee in your bonnet and bother you. But any program that tells you that your job is to fix what the government broke is lying to you. And anytime, just check for that. That's all you got to ever do. All you got to ever do is this thing asking me to fix what America broke? And if the answer to that is yes, then you're looking at a bunch of horse manure. You have to know that. There's not a lot that you have to know, but you got to know that. In a radio program in 1968, Nixon doubled down on his messaging, saying that black Americans do not want more government programs which perpetuate dependency. They don't want to be a colony in a nation. They want the pride. Understand, he's hitting at your emotions now. Hitting you at the emotions. They want the pride and the self-respect and the dignity that only come if they have an equal chance to own their own homes, to own their own businesses, to be managers and executives as well as workers, to have a piece of the action, a piece of the private enterprise. Doesn't that sound like everything we hear today from do-for-selfers? Do-for-selfers are taking their pages out of Nixon. Now Humphrey, we're talking about this election. Humphrey pushed back on Nixon's black capitalism plan in the presidential race, calling it double talk. When Nixon promised voters that the program would cost little, Humphrey retorted, "Of course it will take money. Talking about black capitalism without capital is just kiting. What is it? Kiting political checks." Listen, who didn't I say something about capitalism without capital and financial literacy without finance? Let's finish this up really quickly. Nixon was practically, pay attention to this. Nixon was practically repeating Malcolm X, who had said that the black man should be focusing his every effort toward building his own business and decent homes for himself. Although Nixon left out the part where Malcolm had said, "Show me a capitalist, I'll show you a bloodsucker." He also ignored black power demands for land, reparations, and political sovereignty. So be very careful when these people nitpick and piecemeal Malcolm and other people. Be very careful with these cherry pickers. These cherry pickers are a problem. In 1969, Nixon signed an executive order 11458 establishing the Office of Minority Business Enterprise within the Department of Commerce. The OMB was allocated no direct funds, but instructed to seek private business contributions and help from federal agencies. What this meant in real terms was the OMBE was given responsibility for advising, encouraging, mobilizing, evaluating, collecting information, coordinating activities. But beyond this vague mission, it did not have a mandate or a budget. What have I said, fam, about the importance of a budget? If you want to show me, if you want to prove to me that you mean what you're doing, that's why I don't get down with this HR 40 stuff like this. Because what you have to prove to me is that you're going to do an outlay. The budget is what matters. And don't just do a budget, because somebody will come to you with a budget and say, "We're going to do $10 million for what you want." And you'll be saying, you'll be thinking about $10 million like you hit the lottery. $10 million, a lot of money, $10 million. Compared to what? All budgets are comparatively. You look at every outlay that's compared to what you need. What does this cost? You go into everything knowing the answer. Because if you wait for somebody to tell you the answer, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble. You're going to have a lot of trouble. Trouble. We have to. And we have to understand when we're being taken advantage of. And we're so desirous. And I understand it. And I'm not judging it. Just because I'm talking about it doesn't mean I'm judging it. I'm not judging it. I understand wholeheartedly the desperation. I do. I understand wanting to have a business and be able to walk around and tell people, "Hey, I'm a business person," or whatever. Or because what you really want to say is I'm American. The same way everybody else is American. I get it. That doesn't, but you can't allow people to take advantage of that emotional part of yourself that is desirous of that. And you have to understand that the only way we're made whole and made complete is through reparations. It doesn't come from any of this other stuff, because this other stuff requires that we already had reparations. Right? Like if we got reparations, then we could do all the stuff they're talking about. Right? Let me bring up something real quick. I want to bring up one more image. All of these, so many of these prescriptions kind of, it's almost if they're moving on the map that we already got reparations. We're looking for something to do with them. So it's like we already got reparations. We're looking for some way to put our money. So we already got it. And what am I going to do with it? Okay, the government has set aside some inclusion for me, right? And so what am I going to do with that inclusion? That's almost what it, but that's not what it is. And we've been trying all of this stuff. So let me put this up just 1 second. Freedmen's Bank fails, devastating the black community. For those who say, "Well, we just should have done it differently. We just didn't do it right. We never was good." Understand what happened. In an attempt to restore public trust in the institution, prominent black leader Frederick Douglass was brought on as the bank's president in early 1874. Douglass believed in the importance of the bank's economic power, even putting thousands of dollars of his own money into the coffers to keep the bank afloat. Despite these efforts, the Freedmen's Bank closed its doors in late June 1874. Many sources place the exact date around June 28th, 29th, and the press began to report on the failure. The bank's closure caused more than 60,000 black Americans and black organizations to lose $3 million in savings. Many victims waited for years for a mere fraction of their deposits to be returned. The failure of the Freedmen's Bank financially devastated many who had entrusted it with their funds and had been linked to a cultural legacy of distrust towards banking system within the community. Now here's the thing. I want y'all to research this, and you'll figure out if you look it up. You'll figure out the white speculators. I think one of them was a founder of Howard University, if I'm not mistaken. The white speculators who were a part of what happened to Freedmen's Bank. So we did all of that, took little sharecropping money, all of that, and put it in the bank, and they used it and did what they did with it. And then we're left with nothing. Happens every time. Because you have to have ownership. We have to have reparations. Have to have ownership. Have to have government protection so people just can't come in and speculate. So somebody look up. I'm going to leave that part to you, because when you look up like really what really happened to Freedmen, it's something. It's absolutely unbelievable, but it happened. It's American history. So anyway, fam, I want to hear what everybody has to say. Somebody said, yeah, they speculated all the money away. And we got nothing. It was just gone. White boys playing. No rules. But I want to hear what you all have to say, fam, about the cannabis and what we're going to do. And let's speak to how we keep falling for the okie doke. We have to get into some kind of way where like our emotions, like we got to, somebody can't just manipulate us and make us feel, and they don't have the stuff set up right. Like, what are we doing? Like, how are we? I understand everybody wants to be in business, and they told us one thing and they did another. Well, America ain't did nothing to us but lie the whole time. So how do we? You can't assume any kind of honesty. But anyway, fam, I'm gonna go to the phones. We'll be back in a minute, and I want to hear what everybody has to say.